Hello everyone, we have V3 Cyrene finally. I read over it, was able to understand it a little better, and so let's get straight into it together. Minute of Blooms and Plumes got its damage increased to 60% of Cyrene's total max HP instead of 50%. Her memo skill hasn't changed, this is the buff to non-Chrysosairs, but a lot of Chrysosair buffs did change. For example, RMC now gets his crit rate increased by an amount equal to 72% of Cyrene's crit rate herself. It used to be 60%. I don't really know how much this matters, but we'll see. Right. For Eggy, just a wording change. For My Day, slight buff. Now, the crit damage is 80% for the Godslayer that Cyrene instantly gives him instead of 60%, and there's a little QOL added in here, where if the target gets defeated before the Godslayer's use, then it will target the newly arriving enemy targets instead. As well, removes all CC debuffs inflicted on My Day, it says here as well. So to be honest, I don't think this is anything that crazy. It is a slight buff, but it's just 20% crit damage on the Godslayer, and that's basically it, right? Cassie's buff just got a wording change, didn't actually get buffed at all. Whoops. Over here, we go into the probably biggest nerf from V3 Cyrene that many saw coming. Basically, the action advance and the way it worked with earlier Cyrene does not work the same way anymore with V3 Cyrene. So you can no longer wait until Anoxa's turn, buff him with Cyrene, and then make the next action after the original action also consume 0 AV. It's now instead Anaxa immediately takes action. So big, like not even small, like very fucking big nerf to Anoxa's main DPS with Cyrene, but in return, they buffed his sub DPS capability with Herda and other erudition characters, right? It says here, the next time Anoxa uses an ability after being buffed, he gains true knowledge, and this increases the attack of all erudition characters by 60%, and skill damage dealt by 40% until the start of Anoxa's next turn. So for Herda Havers using her with Anoxa, this will give Cyrene more value in the team. However, for Anoxa main DPS users, this is it's an insane nerf. Like, it's a disgusting nerf to his main DPS, right? After this, we move on to Fenon. Now, when she uses her buff on Fenon, Fenon will gain 6 Core Flame as well as Eternal Ignition. When transforming, if the Core Flame exceeds 12 for each point in excess, Kaslana's crit damage increases by 12% up to 72%. After the extra turns are depleted, transformation will not end, but instead refresh all his turns and give him 4 points of Scourge. At the start of Kaslana's extra turns, consumes an amount of HP equal to 15% of his current HP, and then he has the additional instances of fire damage doing 10% of his attack, right? So there are a few things to go over here when it comes to Fenon's buff specifically. I do believe, if I remember correctly, if you run Sustainless with RMC Fenon and Cyrene, this doesn't really help him at all. Holy voice crack, right? Sorry about that, guys. I just had to talk for a long time with my family, right? This crit damage buff, I don't believe you can actually take all that good advantage of at all. So, in Sustainless with RMC Cyrene, this just doesn't exist. Completely ignore that this buff exists. It's mainly just a buff towards sustain. And even if you can take advantage of this crit damage buff and get to the 15 Core Flame, then most people, if you don't have an E6 Fenon, can only receive a 36% crit damage buff instead of the cap of 72%. The only people who can go past 36% crit damage buff are E6 Fenon owners. So yeah, keep that in mind. This is a bit whale bait, right? After this, you as well have the additional 4 points of Scourge you're given after Fenon uses his finisher. This is just an in general buff 100%, but this is a way bigger buff for E2 plus Fenons in my opinion. So yeah, this is a pretty big whale bait, buff for Fenon, and it still doesn't really fix her stacking issue, and you can't really take advantage of this crit damage buff even if you run Sustainless, which for Fenon is an advantage he has in my opinion. So kind of 50-50 on this buff, but at the end of the day, it is a buff nonetheless in multiple ways, right? After this, we have Cereedra. Nothing changed at all. It's still just a wording change. Now for Evernight, I do believe this is a nerf to her main DPS, and it's a increase in her value for sub DPS with Cassie. So you see here, the damage boost increase that she used to get, which was 48%, has now been nerfed all the way down to 18%. However, they added crit damage boost effect provided by skill is further increased by an amount equal to 12% of Evernight's crit damage. I believe this is the memo skill Evernight has that buffs the crit damage of allies depending on how much remembrance characters are on the team. So increases her value in sub DPS, but I don't think this increases her value in main DPS. Could be 100% wrong on this. Wait for the gameplays. I'll always give a more knowledgeable opinion once I'm able to see actual gameplay of the characters, right? After this, we have a slight buff to Cyrene's memo skill. After Cyrene has gained recollection for each different teammate, when she uses Minute of Blooms and Plumes, additionally deals 1 instance of ice damage equal to 60% of Cyrene's max HP to one random enemy. After Cyrene uses her ultimate, when Blank is summoned, Blank immediately gains 1 story. When story reaches 3 points, consume all points to immediately gain an extra turn and automatically use Minute of Blooms and Plumes. So this used to be part of her E1, right? Seems like they removed half of the E1 from the older versions and simply slapped it on this Memo Sprite skill. So this increases further her main DPS and just DPS in general capability, right? After this, the true damage zone that she puts up on ultimate or skill got slightly buffed to be on the same level as Triby's E1 with 24% true damage instead of the old 20%. This makes sense because, to be honest, Cyrene's buffing capability is pretty weak, right? It's not anything all that special, so it's nice to see a small buff like this, right? After this, the only thing added to her talent is that now when she uses her ultimate, all debuffs on her are dispelled. That's it. Just a very, very small change. And now we move on to the eidolon changes, right? So the new eidolon for E1 is when Cyrene triggers the Memo Sprite skill Ode to Blank while using Minute of Blooms, gains 6 recollection points and increases the number of bounces for this attack by 12. Now I do believe the recollection gain was noticeably buffed as compared to the older E1, which only gave 3 recollection, so that is something you should probably take note of here. This is another buff towards Cyrene's main DPS, as it'll allow her to spam her attack even more often as compared to before. Next, we have her E2, similar to earlier with the Memo Sprite skill, just the skill in general with the true damage buff. The exact same thing applies to the E2 now. Instead of capping out at 20%, it now caps out at 24%, and it gives you 6% true damage increase for each ally that is buffed on the team. Not really surprising. This means now at E2, you can get a up to 48% true damage buff from Cyrene, which is pretty solid, right? Next, for E4, we have each time after Cyrene uses Minute of Blooms and Plumes, bounce damage multiplier of the triggered Memo skill increases by 12% in the current battle and can be stacked up to 12 times. Another big buff compared to the earlier V2 version, where it was only increased by 5% in the current battle, and it didn't have this stacking up ability, right? And lastly, for the E6, it was changed so that instead of giving old type res pen by 12%, she now gives enemy target defense reduction by 20%. So this is pretty big for the people who have a lot of defense reduction into a lot of their characters, such as Anaxa, such as Fenon, such as Cassie, Evernight. A lot of these, Amphorius characters kind of build up on the defense reduction, including Aglaia as well. So it's something you can take probably better advantage of as compared to the res pen, right? And last, but certainly least, is just a change to Cyrene's Lycone. So I do believe this is just a massive nerf. I believe before it increased the effects by 100%, so you could get up to 20% vulnerability and a 32% crit damage buff for all allies. But now it was nerfed all the way down to 60%. So the max vulnerability you can get is, I believe, 16%. And the max crit damage increase that you can get is, I'm not sure, like 24%, somewhere around there, right? My math is really trash. So those are all the Cyrene V3 changes. Some characters receive slight buffs, others just wording changes, and others quite massive nerfs. However, I think the biggest change in direction with V3 Cyrene here is that they are 100% trying to push her DPS capability a lot more as compared to the previous version. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. And peace out.